I found out I had been an unwitting pawn in my family's financial game for years. Olivia, a respected neurosurgeon, dedicated my life and a significant portion of my income to funding my brother Liam's education and lifestyle, all while believing I was helping him achieve his dreams. But it was all a lie, a carefully constructed deception by my parents and him to secure their own future at my expense. I overheard them discussing their plan to use my money to open a private practice for Liam and then cut me out of the family, leaving me with nothing but the scraps of their gratitude. It was then that I realized I couldn't stand by idly as my family orchestrated my betrayal. With this new knowledge, I began a calculated plan to dismantle their entire future, a plan so quiet and precise they would never see it coming. This story is about what happens when you discover the people you love are not who you thought they were, and how you find the strength to fight back for your own life and future. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this story. Tell me in the comments below what you would do in this situation and what makes you feel like you belong. Don't forget to like and subscribe to hear what happens next in this journey. The first time I really saw it, I was 10 years old. My brother Liam, who was 7, had just been in a minor altercation at school. He had pushed a classmate over during a game of tag, and the boy had a scraped knee. The school called, and my parents, Sarah and Robert, rushed to the school, their faces etched with a concern I had never seen them express for me. When they came home, they didn't scold Liam. They hugged him, my mother pressing him against her chest and murmuring, "My poor boy, it's okay. We'll get you some ice cream and we'll watch a movie." Later that evening, I was in my room, trying to finish my homework, when I overheard them talking. "He's so sensitive, Robert," my mother said. "We have to be careful with him. He's a dreamer, a little artist. We can't let anything crush his spirit." I remember standing outside their bedroom door, my small hands clenched at my sides, a cold, empty feeling in my stomach. I was never a dreamer. I was the practical one. The one who got straight A's and won science fairs, the one who didn't need hugs or reassurance. My achievements were simply expected, a given. Liam's scraped knee was a tragedy. My perfect report card was a footnote. This was the blueprint of my childhood. I was the supporting character in the story of my brother's life. This dynamic continued well into our teenage years. I was in AP classes, acing my SATs, and preparing for college. I spent my weekends volunteering at a hospital, a decision that would eventually lead me to my career in medicine. Liam, meanwhile, was exploring his artistic side, which mostly involved painting abstract murals on his bedroom walls and listening to loud music. When I received a full scholarship to a prestigious university, my father's response was, "That's my practical girl. I knew you'd figure it out." He didn't offer a celebratory dinner or a word of genuine pride. A few months later, when Liam graduated with a barely there GPA, my parents gifted him a brand new car so he could find his path. The message was clear. My success was a given, something I was expected to achieve on my own. Liam's failure was a challenge they had to solve, a problem they had to throw money at. It was in that moment, watching him drive away in his shiny new car, that I realized my place in the family was not as a daughter to be cherished, but as a pillar to be leaned on. I worked tirelessly throughout my undergraduate years. My parents, who were now struggling financially, could not offer any support. I took out student loans that piled up like a mountain of debt, and I juggled 3 part-time jobs while carrying a full course load. I subsisted on instant ramen, cold coffee, and the sheer force of my will. I sacrificed my youth, my social life, and my mental health, all for the dream of becoming a doctor, a dream my parents barely acknowledged. When Liam, 3 years my junior, decided he wanted to pursue a career in the creative arts, my parents were overjoyed. They told me they would find a way to help him, even though they had never found a way to help me. I watched with a quiet, burning resentment as they took out a second mortgage on their house to pay for his art school, and I realized that my financial independence was not seen as a triumph, but as a convenient way for them to not have to worry about me. I was on my own, while my brother was given a golden ticket to a future he didn't even have to earn. After completing my residency and fellowship, I finally began my career as a neurosurgeon. The long hours, the high-stakes procedures, and the constant pressure were immense, but so was the financial reward. My first six-figure paycheck was not met with excitement, but with a new kind of responsibility. My parents began calling more often, not just to chat, but to subtly hint at their financial struggles. My brother, Liam, had a string of failed ventures, from a hand-painted ceramics business that sold a total of 2 pots to a pop-up art gallery that went bankrupt in less than 6 months. Each failure was met with my parents' unwavering support and my silent financial aid. It started with a loan to help them with a leaky roof, then became a monthly transfer to cover their mortgage, and soon I was paying their credit card bills, their car payments, and even their groceries. I became their personal ATM, their financial safety net. All the while, Liam's artistic vision was praised and celebrated, and I, the one who was literally keeping their lights on, was nothing more than an afterthought. My best friend, Clara, a therapist, saw the situation for what it was. She had seen my family dynamic over the years and had always been my voice of reason. "They're using you, Olivia," she would say bluntly during our weekly wine nights. "They're a family of 3, and you're the 4th person, the one who just happens to fund their entire existence. You're giving them all this money, and what do you get in return? A pat on the head and a reminder of your duty as a daughter." I would try to defend them, to justify my actions. "Their family, Clara. What am I supposed to do? Let them struggle?" But even as I spoke the words, they felt hollow. I knew she was right, but admitting it meant confronting a painful truth about the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. I kept paying, hoping that my sacrifices would eventually earn their genuine love and appreciation, a hope that was slowly but surely fading. The ultimate betrayal came when Liam decided he wanted to go back to school, not for art, but to get a medical degree. My parents, ecstatic, came to me with a plan. They wanted me to fund his entire medical school education, as well as his living expenses for the next 8 years. They promised me that once he was a practicing doctor, we would open a private practice together, and I would be a co-owner. "It's a family business, Olivia," my father said. "Liam needs your support to get his career started, and then we will all work together and be successful. You will be a partner, a key player in the business, and you will get to work side by side with your brother." I, blinded by the promise of finally being recognized and included as a real part of the family, agreed. I began making monthly transfers, covering his tuition, his expensive apartment, and his lavish lifestyle, all while he was supposedly studying. The amount was staggering, but the promise of a future with my family, of finally being seen as a partner rather than just a bank, was worth it. Or so I thought. I had been having a particularly grueling week at the hospital. A complicated neurosurgery had kept me in the operating room for over 12 hours, and I was exhausted. I decided to stop by my parents' house to drop off some groceries, a habit that had become second nature over the years. I let myself in with the spare key they had given me, the silence of the house a welcome relief from the chaotic hospital. I heard hushed voices coming from my father's study. I paused in the hallway, about to announce my presence, but something in the tone of their voices stopped me. It was a hushed, conspiratorial tone, and I heard my brother's voice, low and smug. "She's so easy to manipulate, Mom. I can't believe she's actually paying for all of this. It's like she'll do anything for our approval." I froze. My heart, which had been racing from the long day, now felt like a lead weight in my chest. My hands, which had been so steady during surgery, began to shake. I pressed my back against the wall, listening intently. My mother, Sarah, was laughing softly. "I told you she would. She's always wanted to be a part of the family business. She's always been so desperate to prove herself to us. The moment we mentioned being partners, she jumped on it." My father's voice, low and serious, cut in. "We need to make sure she doesn't get suspicious. We have to keep up the charade until Liam is out of residency and can start his own practice. We've already got the plans drawn up for the building. It's going to be beautiful, everything you've ever wanted, son." Liam's voice was full of pride. "And you know what the best part is? Once I start earning a real income, we can tell Olivia we're cutting her out. We'll say we've moved on and don't need her help anymore. She'll be out of the picture, and we'll have a brand new practice, all on her dime." My mother's voice was sweet and sugary. "We'll be so successful, we'll be able to tell our friends that we've been supporting Liam all along, that he's a self-made man. We won't have to tell anyone that our money came from Olivia. She's just so gullible." The word gullible hung in the air, a final, cruel blow. My world, which I had so carefully constructed around the hope of family, shattered into a million pieces. The love I thought I had for them, the respect, the admiration, it all turned to ash. I was not a daughter, a sister, or a partner. I was an ATM. I was a tool, a means to an end. My father's words, "She never does enough for us," echoed in my ears, and I understood for the first time that no amount of money or sacrifice would ever be enough for them. They had no intention of ever letting me into their inner circle. I was just a source of income, a temporary solution until Liam, the golden boy, was finally on his own 2 feet. I silently backed away from the study door, my heart pounding in my chest, a cold, empty feeling spreading through me. I placed the grocery bags on the kitchen counter, my hands shaking so violently I had to steady myself against the wall. I heard my brother's obnoxious laugh from the study and my mother's soft, sweet voice, and the sound of their betrayal filled the air. I walked out of the house, my car keys clutched so tightly in my hand that the metal dug into my palm. I got into my car and drove, not knowing where I was going, the tears blurring my vision. The promises of a family business, of being a partner, of finally being seen, it was all a lie. I had been foolish enough to believe them, and now I was paying the price. I ended up at Clara's apartment, a sanctuary I had visited countless times over the years. She listened to me as I recounted everything, my voice hoarse from crying. She didn't say, "I told you so." She just held me, a silent comfort in my darkest hour. "They've shown you who they are, Olivia," she said softly. "It's not about the money anymore. It's about respect. It's about love. And they've shown you that they have neither for you. It's time to take back your power." The phrase, "take back your power," resonated with me. I had been so focused on giving and giving that I had forgotten to hold anything back for myself. That night, I made a silent vow. I would no longer be their victim. They had played a game of betrayal, and now it was my turn to play. And I was going to play for keeps. I woke up the next morning feeling strangely calm, the storm of tears and heartbreak from the night before replaced by a cold, calculated resolve. I had a mission, a singular focus. My first step was to get a complete and accurate picture of my family's finances, not just the money I was giving them, but every single cent they had. I knew my father was bad with money, and that they had been dipping into their retirement fund for years to support Liam's failed ventures. But I needed to know the full extent of the damage. I had set up most of their online banking, so it was a simple matter to access their accounts, as I had the login information. I pulled up their bank statements, their credit card bills, and their investment portfolios, all of which I had been managing. The numbers were staggering. The mortgage was in foreclosure, a fact they had been hiding from me for months, relying on my monthly payments to keep it afloat. Their credit card debt was astronomical, with charges for designer clothes, expensive dinners, and lavish trips, all for Liam and his new business partners. They had even taken out a small business loan in my name, a fact I had not been aware of, to fund Liam's prototype, a prototype that did not exist. I scrolled through their bank statements, watching as my monthly transfers, the money I had worked so hard for, were immediately funneled into Liam's accounts. I saw the thousands of dollars I had sent them for living expenses and medical school tuition being spent on new furniture, expensive gadgets, and a brand new car for Liam. I was not just their ATM, I was a complete fool. The most shocking discovery came when I dug into the details of the private practice they had promised we would open together. I found an email chain between my parents and a lawyer discussing the ownership structure of the new business. The documents were explicit. I was not a co-owner, not a partner, not even a minor shareholder. My name was nowhere on the legal documents. I was merely listed as a silent investor, with my financial contributions being a gift to the family. The documents also detailed how they would take a significant loan from the family business to purchase the new building, which would be put in Liam's name. They were building an empire, a legacy, all on my dime, with no intention of ever letting me have a piece of the pie. The emails were filled with my father's smug comments about how he had secured the family's future, and my mother's joyous proclamations about how Liam would finally be the success we always knew he would be. I looked at the number on the screen, the total amount I had given them over the years, and a wave of nausea washed over me. I had given them over $1 million. $1 million that could have been a down payment on a beautiful home. $1 million that could have been a retirement fund for me, a rainy day fund for my future. $1 million that had earned me nothing but contempt and betrayal. I felt a cold, hard knot of anger form in the pit of my stomach. The anger was so intense it almost felt like a physical pain. I had been so focused on my career, on being the best neurosurgeon I could be, that I had been blind to the conspiracy happening right under my nose. I had been so desperate for their love and approval that I had willingly handed them the keys to my financial kingdom. And they had used it to build a castle for Liam, the golden boy, the one who had never had to work for anything in his life. The sheer scale of their deceit was breathtaking. I sat there for hours, staring at the screen, the numbers blurring together into a sea of red. I thought about all the sacrifices I had made for them, the long nights at the hospital, the countless hours I had spent worrying about their financial well-being, the dinners I had missed, the vacations I had postponed. All of it for a family who was secretly plotting my downfall. I closed the laptop, the screen going black, and felt a quiet, simmering rage take over. They had played a dirty game, a game with my life and my future. And now I was going to play, and I was going to win. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about survival. It was about reclaiming my life and my future. The game was on. I orchestrated the family dinner with a chilling precision. I knew I couldn't just confront them. I had to unmask them, publicly, in a way that would leave no room for doubt or denial. I invited my parents and Liam to a fancy restaurant, telling them I had a big announcement to make. The restaurant was a high-end French place, one they had always wanted to go to but could never afford. I made the reservations and paid for a private room, a small space with a large, round table that felt both intimate and confrontational. When they arrived, my mother was wearing a new dress I had seen on her credit card statement, and Liam was carrying a new designer briefcase, a gift from my father's business associates. They were all smiles and compliments, a performance I was now all too familiar with. "Olivia, darling, this is wonderful," my mother gushed, kissing my cheek. "What's the big news? Did you get a promotion?" I smiled, a tight, thin-lipped smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Something like that," I said, gesturing for them to sit down. The dinner was a series of carefully chosen questions from me and a series of carefully constructed lies from them. I asked my father about the new family business, and he puffed out his chest, telling me about the promising new ventures he and Liam were working on. I asked Liam about his medical school classes, and he spoke of the rigorous curriculum and his brilliant professors, all while avoiding eye contact. My mother, meanwhile, was talking about a new investment they had made, a stock she just knew would double in value. I played along, nodding and smiling, waiting for the perfect moment to drop the bomb. The moment came as we were finishing dessert. The chocolate lava cakes were a beautiful, decadent mess, and the room was filled with the low hum of conversation. I took a deep breath, my hands folded on the table, my voice low but clear. "I have a confession to make," I said, and they all looked at me with curious, unsuspecting faces. I know. The words hung in the air, thick and heavy. I know about the private practice, the one you're building for Liam. The one you're telling everyone is a family business. I know you're cutting me out of the deal. My father's face went white. My mother's hand flew to her mouth, and Liam's smug smile vanished, replaced by a look of pure, unadulterated shock. "What are you talking about, Olivia?" my father stammered, his voice an octave higher than usual. "Don't play dumb, Dad," I said, my voice rising. "I've seen the emails, the legal documents, the financial statements. I know everything. I know you've been using me, lying to me, for years. I know you never had any intention of making me a partner. I was just a source of money, a gullible fool you could use to fund your little boy's dreams." My mother, recovering from her initial shock, tried to play the victim. "Olivia, how could you? We're your family. We would never do that to you. We've always supported you." "You supported me," I laughed, a harsh, brittle sound that echoed in the quiet room. "You supported me. You took out a second mortgage to pay for Liam's art school, while I worked 3 jobs and took out student loans to pay for my own. You took my money to cover your mortgage, your credit card debt, and your car payments while praising Liam's entrepreneurial spirit. You used my money to buy Liam a new car and designer clothes, all while he was supposedly studying. Don't you dare talk to me about support." Liam, pale and defeated, finally spoke. "You're just jealous, Olivia. You've always been jealous of me. You can't stand that I'm the one who gets all the attention. You can't stand that Mom and Dad love me more." "Love you more," I said, my voice trembling with rage. "You think this is love? This is not love, Liam. This is a business transaction. You're their golden ticket to a life of luxury, a life you didn't have to work for. I'm just the one who pays the price. You have been a leech on this family since you were born." My father, his face now a dangerous shade of red, slammed his fist on the table. "You will not talk to your brother like that. He's your family. You're a cold-hearted, selfish woman who only cares about money. We don't need your help. We'll be fine on our own." "Then you should be fine on your own," I said, a strange, calm resolve washing over me. "Because after tonight, you're not getting another cent from me. The well is dry. Consider me disowned." I stood up, left the money for the check on the table, and walked out, leaving them with their lies and their lavish dessert. The drive home was quiet, a stark contrast to the emotional explosion that had just taken place. I wasn't sad or angry anymore. I was cold, precise, and determined. They had said they could manage without my help. I was going to make sure they got exactly what they asked for. I got to my apartment, went to my laptop, and began the quiet, meticulous work of dismantling their financial future. The confrontation had been the unmasking. This was the karmic revenge. My first move was to remove myself from all the family accounts I had set up and managed. I changed the login information on their bank accounts, credit cards, and online banking. I removed my name from their credit cards, a move that would cause a cascade of financial distress they were not prepared for. I sent an email to the mortgage company stating that I would no longer be making the monthly payments, a move that would trigger an immediate foreclosure. I also removed myself from the auto insurance and the phone plan I had been paying for. With each click of the mouse, each deletion of a password, I felt a sense of liberation. Next, I turned my attention to the investment portfolio I had been building for them for years. It had grown significantly, a small fortune I had cultivated with my knowledge and expertise. I logged into the investment accounts, a private portfolio I had been building in my name with a note that it was a family investment. I systematically liquidated every single asset, converting stocks, bonds, and mutual funds into cold, hard cash. I transferred the money into a separate, private account that was in my name only, one they had no knowledge of. The money was my own, the money I had earned through my hard work, and I was taking it back. I was leaving them with a fraction of the inheritance they thought they were getting, a fraction that would barely cover their monthly expenses. The money was gone. Their future, The future they had so carefully constructed on my financial back was gone. The most satisfying part of my revenge was the dismantling of the private practice they had so smugly planned for Liam. I found the emails, the legal documents, and the plans for the new building, and I forwarded them to my lawyer. He, in turn, contacted the bank and the land developer, informing them that Liam and his parents were using fraudulent information and that the silent investor was pulling out of the project. The bank, seeing a potential lawsuit and a massive breach of contract, immediately pulled their funding. The land developer, seeing that Liam had no collateral and no money, canceled the deal. The building, which had been a symbol of their betrayal, would now stand as a monument to their failure. I had not just taken their money, I had destroyed their dream. I also made sure to send an email to every single family member, outlining my parents' and Liam's betrayal, providing screenshots of the documents I had found, and explaining how they had manipulated me for years. I didn't want them to be able to spin a new story, a new lie. I wanted everyone to know the truth. I knew it was a drastic step, but they had played a dirty game, and I was not going to let them win. I knew there would be a fallout, that my family would be angry and hurt, but I was prepared for it. I had been hurt enough. Now it was their turn to feel the pain they had caused me. The revenge was complete. I had taken back my life, my money, and my future. I was no longer the gullible, naive little girl who had been so desperate for her parents' love. I was a woman, a neurosurgeon, and I was in control of my own destiny. The quiet, methodical way in which I had dismantled their lives was a testament to my strength and my resilience. It was the best decision I had ever made. I felt a sense of peace that I hadn't felt in years, the kind of peace that comes from knowing you have done the right thing, no matter how hard it was. I was free. I woke up the next morning feeling oddly serene. The calm was short-lived. My phone, which I had put on silent, was a chaotic mess of missed calls, frantic texts, and angry voicemails. My father's voice, usually so composed, was filled with a desperate panic. "Olivia, what have you done? The bank called, they've pulled the funding for Liam's project. The mortgage company called, they said the payment was canceled. Your brother's car was repossessed this morning. We're ruined, this is your fault." He then threatened to take legal action, telling me that I was committing elder financial abuse. I laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. I had already spoken to my lawyer, who had assured me that I had done nothing illegal. All the money was in my name, and I had every right to liquidate my own assets and end my financial support. My mother's voicemails were a masterclass in emotional manipulation. First, she was angry and hurt, telling me I was a monster and a terrible daughter. Then, she was begging, her voice trembling, telling me she was having heart palpitations and that my father's blood pressure was dangerously high. "Please, darling, come to your senses. We're a family. We can fix this. Just put the money back and we can talk." I deleted the messages, the sound of her false tears a painful reminder of her deceit. Liam's texts were full of rage and entitlement. "You've ruined my life, Olivia. My project, my career, my future, all gone because of your jealousy. I'm going to make you pay for this." I simply blocked his number. He had nothing to take from me. I had already taken everything back. The most surprising calls and messages came from my extended family. My Aunt Alina, my mother's sister, called me, her voice filled with a mixture of shock and sympathy. "Olivia, I can't believe what you told me. I had no idea. We all thought Liam was the one funding everything. Your mother and father told us he was a business genius and that he was making them a fortune. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. They've been lying to us all this time." My cousin, Sarah, who had always been a close friend, sent me a text. "I'm so proud of you, Olivia. It must have taken so much courage to do what you did. I'm here for you, no matter what." Their support was a balm to my wounded soul. I had lost my immediate family, but I had gained a new kind of family, one that was built on truth and honesty. The fallout was swift and brutal. My parents and Liam were forced to sell their house, the house I had been paying the mortgage for, and move into a small, two-bedroom apartment. My father, who had been unemployed for years, had to get a job at a local grocery store to make ends meet. My mother, who had been a stay-at-home wife for most of her life, had to get a part-time job as a receptionist at a dental office. Liam's private practice was a bust. He had no money, no connections, and no skills, and he was forced to take a job as a medical assistant, the lowest rung on the medical ladder. The empire they had planned to build on my back was now a pile of rubble. I did not feel guilty. I felt liberated. I had given them every chance to be honest with me, to be a real family. But they had chosen to be liars and manipulators. They had chosen to use me, and now they were paying the price. The karmic revenge was a bitter pill for them to swallow, a lesson in honesty and integrity that they would never forget. I had taken back my life, my future, and my self-respect. And that was worth more than $1 million. I had lost the family I thought I had, but I had found a new kind of family, one that was built on love, respect, and honesty. And that was the greatest gift of all. 6 months after the confrontation, I felt like a different person. The constant anxiety and emotional weight that had been a part of my life for so long were gone, replaced by a sense of calm and a renewed sense of purpose. I had a new, beautiful apartment in a different part of the city, a sanctuary where I felt safe and in control. The money I had reclaimed from my family's investment portfolio was now in a high-yield savings account, a security blanket for my future. I was no longer living paycheck to paycheck, no longer worried about a phone call from my parents telling me they had another emergency. I had a newfound freedom, a sense of liberation that was intoxicating. I took a sabbatical from my job to focus on my personal life. I started therapy, a journey of self-discovery that helped me unpack years of emotional trauma and manipulation. I joined a support group for adult children of emotionally abusive parents, and hearing their stories, so similar to my own, helped me understand that what I had experienced was not my fault. It was not a sign of my weakness, but a testament to my resilience. My therapist encouraged me to find new hobbies, new passions. I took up pottery, finding a quiet, meditative joy in molding clay with my hands. I started running, a physical release for the stress and anxiety that had been building up in me for years. I also reconnected with old friends I had neglected while I was so focused on my family's needs. We had long dinners, went to concerts, and spent weekends at the beach, and I realized how much of my life I had put on hold for my family. My relationships with my extended family were also healing. My Aunt Alina and my cousin Sarah had become my new support system. We had weekly dinners, long phone calls, and shared laughs, and they never once pressured me to reconcile with my parents. They saw the truth, and they chose me. My mother and father, meanwhile, continued to spiral. I heard through my aunt that they were struggling to make ends meet, their pride shattered and their lies exposed. Liam, without my financial support, had been forced to drop out of his medical residency. His career as a neurosurgeon, the career he had planned to build on my back, was over before it had even begun. He was now living with my parents, working as a medical assistant, and complaining to anyone who would listen about how I had ruined his life. I didn't feel a sense of vindication or triumph. I felt a sense of closure. They were living the life they had chosen, a life of deceit and lies, and they were finally facing the consequences. I, on the other hand, was building a life of my own, a life of honesty, integrity, and self-respect. I was no longer a victim. I was a survivor. The money, the status, the inheritance, it was all a meaningless part of the story. The real story was about my journey from a gullible, naive girl to a strong, independent woman who had found her own worth. One day, I got a text message from my father. "We are having a family dinner for Christmas. We want you to come. We can put all of this behind us and be a family again." The text was filled with a false warmth, a hollow attempt at reconciliation. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of their deceit, just a demand for me to return to the fold, to go back to being their ATM. I didn't reply. I had made my peace. I was no longer their daughter. I was a woman who had found her own family, a family that was not built on blood, but on love, respect, and honesty. A year had passed since I had walked out of that restaurant, leaving my family and their lies behind. The anniversary was not a day of sadness, but of celebration. I hosted a dinner party at my new apartment, inviting my friends, my cousin Sarah, and my Aunt Alina. We laughed, shared stories, and celebrated a new kind of family, a family we had all chosen. I felt a sense of belonging that I had never felt before, a sense of peace that was deeper than any financial security could ever be. I was a neurosurgeon, a woman with her own private practice, a woman who had found her own sense of purpose, her own sense of worth. I had a new partner, a kind, understanding man who loved me for who I was, not for what I could give him. I occasionally heard updates about my parents and Liam through my aunt. They were still struggling financially, living a modest life they had not been prepared for. The beautiful house, the new cars, the lavish vacations, it was all gone. They were living with the consequences of their lies. I felt no joy in their suffering. I felt a quiet sense of closure. They had chosen to be liars and manipulators, and they had paid the price. They had lost their daughter, the one who had loved them unconditionally, the one who would have given them anything they wanted. They had chosen money over family, and in the end, they had lost both. Looking back, I realized that the moment my father disowned me, he had done me the greatest favor of my life. He had freed me from a prison of my own making, a prison of unrealistic expectations, and a desperate need for their love and approval. He had forced me to see the truth, a truth that had been right in front of me all along. The greatest lesson I had learned was that family is not about blood or obligation. It is about love, respect, and honesty. It is about being seen for who you are, not for what you can give. And sometimes, the family you choose is the only family you will ever truly have. I was no longer the gullible, naive girl who had been so desperate for her parents' love. I was a woman who had found her own worth. I was a woman who had found her own family. Have you ever experienced a similar situation or felt that you had to choose between your family and your own well-being? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, make sure to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear that sometimes. The family we choose is more important than the family we are born into. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, never settle for relationships that diminish your worth.